I'm Stephen Stonberg, the CEO of Bittrex Global. So happy to be, at least virtually, with you in New York for the CoinGeek conference. I wish I could be there in person. Today, I'm looking forward to talking to you a bit about digital currency and financial inclusion and the role that Bittrex Global is playing in that. So in terms of our table of contents, just take you through what we're going to talk about, a bit about Bittrex Global, set the stage for us, the problem we're trying to solve, blockchain and cryptocurrencies as a solution to inclusion, and the future. So a little bit about Bittrex Global. We have as the name would suggest, a truly global presence. And Bittrex Global is the brand of Bittrex for the clients outside of the United States. So Bittrex has been around since 2014. The company is still headquartered in Seattle. We run 2 exchanges with the Bittrex brand. One is called Bittrex, just for US customers, and then Bittrex Global for anybody who got a non-US passport and who's not residing in the US goes through Bittrex Global. Right now, we operate mainly out of Liechtenstein in Vaduz, which is a little country between Switzerland and Austria. It's an EEA member state. And basically, we have a full trade license and we're supervised by the FMA, which is the bank regulator under the terms of the Blockchain Act. That's for all the compliance and AML standards. And we also have a full license in Bermuda, which is a UK-dependent territory that has we have a Class F digital assets license there. And the interesting thing about the Bermuda license, they don't distinguish between token types, and you can trade security tokens there. So we have utility tokens and security tokens trading in Bermuda, just utility tokens trading in Liechtenstein. So what is the problem in financial inclusion? It's not just a developing world problem. I think people are shocked when you go through this data, but 1 out of 3 people in the world are unbanked. That's World Bank source data. 2 billion people still don't have access to financial tools to protect, grow, and plan their finances. 22% of Americans are unbanked or underbanked. That's from the Federal Reserve. That's, to me anyway, that's quite a shocking number. You think that's not the US. But then again, we're seeing a lot of things recently which we would have never expected to see here. And 3 billion people had no financial safety net during the pandemic. And that's the source of Oxfam. And I think, again, some of this pre-existed COVID, and I think some of it's been exacerbated by COVID. So how do we solve this? Well, I think step 1, technology is the answer. And we've seen technology solve a lot of problems that we've already had that we now have been solved and we take it for granted. But for instance, mobile phones are a super interesting gateway for financial inclusion. Right now they're facilitating payments and services. Of the 2 billion unbanked adults around the globe, 2/3 have mobile phones. And financial services can be provided to the unbanked through mobile phones and the internet. So again, what's interesting is a lot of these countries didn't even have landlines in the 90s and they switched right to mobile. Now that they have these mobile networks in place, we can now leverage them. Even if they don't have a computer in their house or Wi-Fi, they've got access to a phone. Guess what? You can plug into some sort of financial inclusion. So let's talk about some actual use cases globally. So in Kenya, there's a company called M-Pesa, and the M-Pesa mobile payment system allows Kenyans to send money, pay their bills, and make withdrawals from physical ATMs, all directly from their mobile phones. And then the network has over 40 million users, and it's going to expand to 7 countries in Africa. That's pretty amazing. And probably most of these people had no access before this. And in China, we have an example called Yuebao, which is, again, a fintech financial inclusion solution where Alipay users can place their money, a minimum of 1 RMB or about 15 cents when I'm doing this, into a money market fund that returns significantly higher rates than those provided by banks. So this is a fintech solution, not a crypto solution. And there's 588 million people that place their spare savings into a Yuebao account, once making it the world's largest money market fund, beating out JP Morgan and Fidelity. So again, really interesting how fintech and, combined with mobile is really changing just the way that we invest, irrespective of crypto. And then we add in the layer of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrencies are growing in appeal globally. Now, how common is it? And what's interesting, the highest penetration is in some of the emerging countries where there isn't great sort of existing financial inclusion networks, which is, one of the key premises and use cases of blockchain. So cryptocurrencies have had a much higher adoption rate in these countries. 1 out of 3 Nigerian adults uses cryptocurrency for everything from buying and selling goods and services to sending money to family and friends abroad. There's high rates of adoption They've been recorded all over the developing world, from Vietnam, Turkey, and South Africa, and higher than the U.S., where, as we saw, there's still a lot of unbanked, but it's the rate in the U.S. is not as high as in places like Nigeria, Vietnam, South Africa, where again they're skipping right to these sort of crypto mobile solutions. So the benefit of just having access to any sort of financial services, traditional or crypto, they're all the same. You can safeguard your assets, you can grow your assets, and you can share your assets. And these are things we want everybody should have a right to do. So how do we safeguard assets with cryptocurrencies? So again, depending on where you live, and I think we're starting to see this now in the US, where inflation is now at a 30-year high, but that's much more something that's been characteristic of emerging economies. So if we look at the Nigerian naira in that chart, it devalued by 50% in less than a 5-year period. That's a pretty severe devaluation. So if you're a Nigerian and you had your money in Bitcoin, not only would you have preserved value, you might have accreted in value. Whereas if you just kept it in local currency, you lost half of it automatically for doing nothing. Cryptocurrencies and stablecoins can now function as a safer way to protect your assets as a store of value. And again, using the Nigerian example, if they didn't want to take the risk of Bitcoin, they could have just kept their money in USDC, which is a stablecoin. Again, the dollars had some depreciation, but nothing on the scale of what they saw in their local currency. So it's all about just having more options for safeguarding assets. And again, some more global use cases. Let's look at Lebanon. Lebanon has lost 90% of its currency value since 2019. The currency is the Lebanese pound. 50% of the country now lives below the poverty line. And the use of crypto in Lebanon could be a game changer in the country, especially, again, these countries like Lebanon and the same for Nigeria, they really depend on foreign remittances, where people leave the country, work abroad, earn hard currency usually, and they send it back. And we'll talk a bit about how crypto helps with that process. And again, Venezuela, which is I think the worst in terms of inflation example, in 2018, Venezuelan central bank devalued its currency by 95%. So that meant for every dollar equivalent of Venezuelan money you have, I think it's called the bolivar, you had 5 cents left, just because the central bank went like that, snapped its fingers. So not a really good place to store your money. Crypto adoption in Venezuela is one of the highest in the world, which is what you would expect. And crypto is used to send remittances and protect wages from inflation and help businesses manage cash flow. And again, I think we'll start to see some of this in the US. Crypto in general just takes the power away from these central banks, whether they be emerging markets or developed markets, and puts it back to the way it was designed. So let's talk about growing our wealth with cryptocurrencies. So blockchain and cryptocurrencies can be used to grow wealth. Wealth building tools traditionally have been only reserved for developed countries, not developing. So people in developing countries had no access to diversified portfolios and brokerage accounts. They typically don't have enough money to buy food, let alone divvy it up into a sort of diversified portfolio. But right now, people can globally use blockchain technology to build their wealth, and they can create diversified portfolios with different asset classes, because with tokens, you can buy fractional pieces of a token. So let's say that you only had $10 to invest total, you could actually create the sort of just example diversified portfolio on the pie chart, and you could allocate across tokenized stocks, gold, altcoins, Bitcoin, and US dollar with $10 or $5, which you can't do in the real world in sort of brokerage accounts. They won't even open an account unless you have sometimes 10,000 or 50,000 minimum, right? Because stocks can now be tokenized. So in a tokenized stock, let's say tokenized Apple or Tesla, we trade those on our Bermuda exchange. You don't have to buy a share of Tesla, which is over $700 a share right now. Whereas with the tokenized version of Tesla, which again is the token that represents the value of Tesla, you can buy fractional pieces and pay in Bitcoin. So that just changes the whole playing field and things that you can do. It's very exciting. And then we have the whole DeFi revolution and decentralized finance, which is also driving financial inclusion. So what is DeFi? You hear a lot about it. So it's a new way to execute financial transactions where traditional financial institutions and intermediaries are cut out due to blockchain. So centralized finance, which is what an example of Bittrex Global is, a centralized exchange, even though we're in crypto and blockchain. But due to the nature of crypto and blockchain, especially blockchain technology, it enables DeFi, which is basically peer-to-peer, which you also have in the real world. You have a lot of peer-to-peer lending. It just cuts out the middleman. What's interesting about this, and why do you care? So look at the size of that market. In May 2020, it was less than $1 billion total value. May 2021, it's $85 billion, and I'm sure since then it's grown even more. So you can't ignore this. And how can it help financial inclusion? Well, decentralized exchanges give access to more types of financial assets. There's decentralized lending. There's no middleman. You get fairer loans and better rates. And staking and yield farming gives you high returns on assets like stablecoins. So instead of putting your money in the Nigerian bank in Naira, where it could be worthless in 3 years, and you probably don't earn interest, you can have your money sitting in Bitcoin and be earning staking fees, or even USDC or USDT and earning a return. So again, it's giving users more safer options and more interesting options for their wealth preservation and growth. So upending remittances and cross-border payments. So blockchain and cryptocurrencies can make sending money across borders much cheaper and more efficient. As we talked about before, you're going to see a lot of remittances are key for these countries. People leave, they work abroad, send all the money home. So right now, Western Union and these other services take a disproportionate amount of it in really high fees. Again, very unfair. So you can see the world's top remittance receipts go to places like India, China, Mexico, the Philippines, Egypt, all developing countries. So lower transaction fees and settlement times with blockchain than versus fiat, greater options for recipients. The funds can be withdrawn in Bitcoin, dollars, or local currency. And remittances are going to reach almost $600 billion by 2021. So, and the costs on average are about 6.38%, almost 7% of the remittance amount. That's a ton of money that's being left on the table. It's about $40 billion a year, which again, these are some of the poorest people in countries on earth that are doing where the remittances are really important. So low transaction fees with Bitcoin SV can be an effective tool for remittances. So there's, it's 1/50th to 1/100th of a US cent versus a percentage of a transaction fee with Visa or Western Union or any of these others. And currently, BSV is processing 9,000 transactions per second and has tested higher versus 1,700 average for Visa. So it's cheaper and better. Why wouldn't you want to use BSV? And again, another global use case for Bitcoin SV, Minute Money. This is an app from a South African company called Centbee, uses Bitcoin SV's capabilities as a data ledger to act as a payment settlement system, make fast and cheap international remittances. And Minute Money is available for use in South Africa, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, and Uganda. So quickly, El Salvador, I'm not going to go into it in detail. It's been so much in the press, but El Salvador just made Bitcoin legal tender and has a lot of the same characteristics of the other countries we talked about. The big difference is they made Bitcoin legal tender, and that's been all over the news. So what is the takeaway from all of this? I mean, crypto and blockchain is going to be great for financial inclusion. It was already happening anyway with fintech and mobile devices. It's just accelerating. But progress is going to take time. And I think the biggest impediments, unfortunately, are people like the World Bank and the IMF. They're a bit hypocritical. They don't like Bitcoin becoming a currency, yet the World Bank and IMF policies have driven most of these countries into complete poverty. So something's got to give. And I think we are seeing some movement in very positive ways. And countries like El Salvador, that was pretty risky and interesting move that they just took. I think we're going to have to see this tension developing between the IMF and the World Bank and crypto. And hopefully it's going to keep moving in the right direction.
Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin wallet, blockchain, stablecoins, MetaNet, the evolution of money. Everybody is talking about Bitcoin today. But what exactly is it? Learn the basics from experts. Learn what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it matters. Bitcoin 101, your ultimate guide to the fundamentals of blockchain.